Hello and welcome to Ops and Hops, the podcast for those who like beer but have to work in tech to afford it. Today I've got Malcom Matalka. He is the co-founder of Terrateam, one of the wonderful Terraform tacos out there, Terraform automation collaboration software companies.
I think that's
Almost
right.
got it all. Yeah, I think we got it. So, Malcom, welcome to the show. What are you drinking and what made you choose it?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me here, Derek. Happy to be here. So, because I'm a sailor, I have had obligatorily to get into rum. So, this is a Diplomatico, which is a very nice, easy drinking. You can just drink it straight. You don't have to mix it. No rum and cokes here, please, for Diplomatico. It's a little bit above that. Now, I have committed a little bit of sacrilege. I put 2 ice cubes in there, but I want to last the whole podcast.
It releases the flavor, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Releases the flavor.
Yeah.
Today I've got a Solemn Oath. We're all Misfits beer here. Solemn Oath is very close to me in Chicago. Decided to kick the IPAs to the curb for at least one show. I'm getting a little tired of them, to be honest. And
That's
honestly,
a dark looking beer from here too.
yeah, it's really smooth, really chill. I believe it's a porter. Got some holiday spices going on. Honestly, it's not bad. Nice and festive.
'Tis the season.
Absolutely. So anyway, Malcom, you said you are a sailor. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, like a lot of people during COVID, I spent a lot of time on YouTube, and YouTube decided to start showing me sailing videos, which I'd always had this idea in the back of my head, like, oh, it'd be cool to just be on a sailboat and travel around. But I didn't really do any research beyond that, and I thought it was kind of ridiculous. But there's all these people on YouTube that live on a boat, they're traveling around, visiting different places, and I was like, that's cool. So I set up a 3-year plan to sell all my stuff, find a boat to buy it, and move on to it. And I pretty much hit that mark. So March of 2023, I moved on to a boat that I bought in the Caribbean, and I've been mostly there. I come back and forth to my home in Europe as well, but mostly I'm on the boat.
That's fantastic. And I mean, I remember just living in Boston, I think it was 2016 or so. I was already hearing about people who were moving on boats because it was so expensive just to rent that they were actually living cheaper just living on a boat in the marina. But of course, it
Oh
got a little
yeah.
colder than the Caribbean.
Yep. It's so that aspect is actually kind of interesting because we're called cruisers, and we just like to go around, see different places. You stay there for a little while, then you move on to the next place. But there's also a subset of people who just buy boats and live on them. And a lot of places aren't so into those people because as cruisers, we end up spending money at the places we go because it's sort of like a tourist experience. But a lot of people just living on their boats are just living there, living pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And some people think they become kind of a nuisance. And that ends up sort of having sort of a tangle with us other people that look the same from the outside, but we're just here for a totally different purpose.
Right. Yeah. No, I could see that. I used to live in a port city down in South Georgia, and you could definitely tell the difference. One of them was going to the bar every day, and,
Yeah.
and the other was taking a bath in the sink. But
Yeah.
but we don't have to dive into that too much. We might
Yeah.
get a political firestorm.
Yeah, yeah, maybe a little bit. But I think my timing ended up working out really, really well because one of the things that makes this possible for me is Starlink exists now. And
Yep.
yeah, I could tether off my cell phone, and the cell phone coverage in the Caribbean's pretty good. It's not amazing, but it's pretty good. But it is like the latency is pretty high and the connection speeds can be slow. And Starlink just totally makes that a non-issue. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's huge. I
Yeah.
just started looking at Starlink the other day for no reason other than I think it hit the news, whatever, for some new thing, and I was just like, oh, I kind of wonder how much this is, and Honestly, like nowhere near as expensive as I thought it could be.
Yep.
I know, like, the Marines, like, a couple grand a month or something like that. But I've definitely installed satellite systems in rural areas that were that much or more for like 512K or something like
Oh
that.
yeah.
Like, just absolutely staggering how bad it was back then. And now we've got a lot of opportunity to help so many people in rural areas who don't want to get on the grid and don't want to be
Yep.
subject to that nightmare. So it's
One
good to see.
Yeah, one thing that's pretty nice too is at least when I got my setup, um, the subscription fee depends on where your address is. So if you're living in the Caribbean, you're a local there, you actually pay less than somebody living in a city like Boston or something like that.
Uh,
So
that
they rate it
tracks.
depending on sort of the average income of that country.
Oh, well, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, opinions of Elon aside, the technology is really, really great to
Oh, it's
have.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
don't like
No,
to
it's
say the word game changer because I think it sounds really lame because, everything's
yeah,
a game changer for someone, but at least for my situation, it really is a game changer. It makes things possible that weren't before.
it
And
disrupted everything.
yeah, and well, I mean, I can go out where I'm not near land at all and still have internet. I can go on a
Right.
multi-day passage where I don't have any cell service and still work.
How recently did you switch over to Starlink from cellular?
June. So I
Okay, so
was
you have
in,
experienced both.
yeah. So I was there starting in March. So I had a few months just on the cell phone and then switched over. And you can immediately tell like the latency's better, just the
Yeah.
experience better overall.
Yeah, I use GitHub code spaces a lot. Of course, that's a remote terminal. And just like sitting at a coffee shop, sometimes I'm typing and all of a sudden nothing will show up on the screen and you
Yep.
got to wait for a little bit for everything to catch up. Uh, and yeah, so I can't imagine using a cell phone
Yeah.
in the ocean trying to get that to
Oh
work.
yeah. I do feel kind of like that comedy sketch though, where they're talking about I forget who it is, but he's talking about how someone's freaking out on an airplane because the Wi-Fi doesn't work, and he's like, "You realize this took like a whole family's worth of lives to make it across from Boston to LA back in the day, and it took like 6 months, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like I understand that, but the Starlink's way better than a cell phone."
Yeah. Yeah. No, I used to love think, you'd sit there and you get like, you order food and they get behind, or you send like a really dumb text and all of a sudden somebody didn't get it. It's like, yeah, that went to space before it made it down here.
Yep.
It's kind of like, oh, right. You start thinking about those types of things. So do you find, you've been running this company. How long have you been running Terra Team?
We've been, so me and my co-founder Josh have been working on this for a few years. We really only went live with it really seriously in 2023. And
Okay.
that's when we thought it was good enough to show the world and get people to start using it for real. So yeah, we're talking, it's December now, it's talking a whole year. And I've been
Okay.
in the Caribbean for most of that.
Yeah, I mean that market's definitely been exploding lately.
Yeah.
For those who know me, I was at Spacelift before, so I've seen all of this. Definitely seen some of the pains and stuff. I know Terra Team hits a pretty cool angle right now in that it's all within GitHub, so it's
Yeah.
kind of
We're
comfortable
niche.
for people to adopt really quickly instead of having to learn a new UI or set up a bunch of abstractions and stuff like that. Kind of keeps you single pane of glass. But do you find that people still ask for a UI?
A little bit for and I don't know if I should say this, but it's because GitHub has a sadly large number of outages, and sometimes
Okay.
those affect the webhooks that we have, and
Yeah,
so sometimes it can there can be a delay in how long it takes between trying to do something with us and it making it to us. And some people
sure.
have said, "Hey, it'd be great to have a UI where I can just go in and click run this now."
Right. Yeah. No, that actually makes perfect sense. I think
Yeah,
that would be super
and
useful.
our thesis is basically that when everything's going as it should, you should never have to leave GitHub to accomplish what you want. So everything is within the GitHub pull request. You can control the entire system from that. But we have actually released a UI this week the initial version is very alpha, so things are changing quickly. To try to get those things that don't make sense in a pull request, like maybe you want drift, for example.
Right.
Drift is something where you just want to run it periodically and see what's changed, and that's not a pull
Yep.
request you're doing. You want to be able to see that report. And things like audit trails, all those sorts of things are things that makes a lot of sense in UI, and they're not part of your daily experience in doing Terraform changes. They're sort of something else that you want to do, and a UI makes a lot of sense, and we're not opposed to that at all.
Yeah, I know with other platforms and just, simple GitLab setups and stuff like that. It's like so many times I've got to sit there and run empty commits just to trigger something.
Yep.
And it's just, although it makes sense in a way, it's not really intuitive to like grab the intern and say, "Hey, can you go run a bunch of empty commits to make this happen?"
Yeah. It's a bad
So,
UX.
yeah, for sure. So working from the boat, do you find, what's been your largest struggle other than like latency? Do you find, time changes or weird things like that become quite an issue, or has it been mostly effortless aside from, the occasional storm?
Oh, it's definitely not effortless. We're between 5 and 6 hours apart now, where before me and my co-founder were in the same time zone. So that
Yep.
definitely has its struggles. Um, because I would say that one of the biggest issues is because I'm new to the boat and it needs a lot of work to get up to the point where it's really a pleasant place to live, is juggling the time between working on that and then working on the company. And, you gotta focus on the company because that's what's important. That's what allows me to live there. But it is sometimes I'm like, oh, I really want to work on this and finish that up, but gotta do what pays the bills, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes you need to bail and release the bilge.
Yeah, exactly. And like one of the other struggles just during summer is it is hot, and productivity and hot are definitely inversely related.
I can definitely see that. Yeah, I'm from Southeast Georgia. I mean, we're next to one of the largest swamps in the U.S. and
Oh,
the Okefenokee Swamp. I mean, we're talking 98% humidity most days. It's
ouch.
brutal, but you can see why I stayed inside and coded instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
So how do
I
you?
would say in total,
Yep,
it's a good experience.
that's awesome.
And yeah, there's been some challenge in sort of figuring out how to manage the time as best I can. But
Yep.
that's, I guess it's not a huge difference from, like if you move into a new house that needs some work, you're still trying to work and get your house together.
Right. Is this like, is it sail? Is it powered? Is it a little bit of both? How
Yep.
often do you do both? Or
So I've got a sailboat. It's a
Mhm.
39-foot Amel Sharky from 1983. That's what's called a ketch. So it has two masts instead of one.
Okay.
Most sailboats you can think of, this sort of the view in your head when you say sailboat to someone is usually a single mast. So it's got
Yep.
two. It's actually, so the Amel boats are known for being designed for, it's called like blue water cruising, which means going over oceans. So I have a long-term plan in the next 1 to 2 years to actually do a transatlantic, try to get the boat ready for that.
That's awesome.
I try to put up sails as much as possible,
Okay.
but it does have a diesel motor in it. Pretty much all sailboats also have a diesel motor, unless they're really small or maybe like a racing boat or something like that, just because
Yep.
you have to. When you're coming into a marina, for example, it's for that kind of boat, you really need either someone to tow you or use your motor.
Okay. And really curious, how many times have you squeezed something like tack or jibe into your comments of your code? Are you starting to squeeze sailing verbiage into your code? Because if you're not, I'd love to see it.
I really actually should do that. I think, instead of like backlog grooming, it's cleaning the bilge.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that a lot. The poop deck.
Exactly.
Oh, that's great. That's
Little
great.
piece of trivia for you. How large do you think the largest boat that Christopher Columbus on his first voyage sailed to the U.S. was? How many feet long?
I'm afraid to answer this because you you asked me, and by you asking me, I feel like it's just this like obscenely low number or something.
Yeah,
Like
clearly I'm asking
45
because it's not
feet. Yeah,
obvious, right? Yeah.
like I want to say like 45 feet or something stupid like
Well,
that.
that's a good guess. It's around, I believe the number's around 60 feet for the longest, and then the shortest one, probably high 40s, something
That's
around
wild.
there. And as comparison, my boat, which feels small for even a single person, two people will be fine on
Yeah,
it, but it still feels small,
yeah.
is 39 feet.
Is the Pinta the smallest one? Do we know?
Actually, I think the Santa Maria is the largest, and the Pinto
Yeah.
sounds like it could be a small one.
Yeah. Sounds pretty small. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a lot's happened obviously in the past weeks, or has it been months? I'm not even
Months, like
sure.
3 months
God,
now.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
August 10th.
the BS license. The business source license. But some of us call it the BS license. Was added to Terraform, Vault, everything within
Yep.
within HashiCorp. Um, this has happened before. Elastic's done it. I believe Redis did it. A lot of other was it
Mongo,
Redis?
I
Yeah,
think, as
yeah.
well.
Mongo did it, and sometimes I kind of understand it because these are platforms with UIs and like all of this extra stuff that was done. They put a lot of work into it, and although I don't necessarily agree with it completely, I still have a little more empathy with
Mm-hmm.
them. But when you're talking about something, like Terraform and the fact that it's just kind of like, maybe we don't like it. If you start making too much money, then we're mad at you. But until then, just pay $450 an hour to a lawyer to make sure that you're fine.
Yep.
So not a huge fan of that. Obviously, that came after you and Spacelift, M0, and all of these other players
Yep.
in the game. How are you dealing with that right now? How are you feeling?
Yeah. So I guess for a quick recap for the 2.5 people listening to this that don't know what happened is the license change, as you said, to the BS license. Specifically, the language is very vague, and it says, and I'll focus on Terraform. They affected a lot of their products, but Terraform's the one that we care about at Terra Team. Is you're not allowed to embed or host the binary if you're providing a service that competes with a service that HashiCorp provides. What any of that means is up to, I guess, HashiCorp's lawyers to decide before they sue you. Um, and a reaction to that was to make OpenTofu, which is this amazing shirt you're wearing right now,
Yep.
which is so the license change only impacts versions of Terraform 1.6
Yep.
and going forward. So all legacy ones are not impacted by it. So OpenTofu, a bunch of us got together, Spacelift, M0, ourselves, um, Gruntwork as well, and
Mm-hmm.
Scalar got together and decided that what was best for uh, both the community and of course ourselves, because we're also businesses. So there's we got to think of our business as well. But really, the community, everything all together, when you look at the big picture, was to fork it and create OpenTofu, which is a Terraform fork, so it's compatible with Terraform. In the future, it's probably going to grow some stuff that maybe Terraform doesn't have. The goal is
Like
to be backwards
barnacles.
compatible. Yeah. Um, and things moved really quickly,
Yeah.
and OpenTofu actually got into Linux Foundation pretty fast.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
means, unlike Terraform, which is owned by a single vendor and a single vendor makes all the decisions, OpenTofu is controlled by a foundation. And part of the requirements of being part of that foundation is you have to guarantee that you're going to be open source, real open source, for the entire lifetime of the project. They will help you with the management, community governance, and all of that. So the hope with OpenTofu is that the community is really involved in helping drive the features forward. One of the big complaints about the versions of Terraform before was that HashiCorp wasn't really responding to what the community was asking for. There was even pull requests that passed all tests and everything worked, and they just wouldn't get around to reviewing it and pulling it in.
Or they reviewed it and decided that it was against their better interests or did not align with this gigantic move that happened.
Yeah, that's another way to put it.
Yeah, no.
Now, what really grinds my gears about the license change is the language coming out of HashiCorp, and I've also seen it from people supporting HashiCorp on like Reddit, Hacker News, is calling us basically freeloaders.
Yeah. I've seen that and not a fan. Not a fan at
Yeah,
all.
and I think so. Of course, HashiCorp has every legal right to relicense the work.
Mm-hmm.
They have, well, with the caveat that I don't know if every single line of code in Terraform was actually copyright CLA'd, because they didn't necessarily start that as soon, but let's assume it is. So with that caveat, um, they don't really have the social contract. Think of open source as a social contract. They violated that in this process. But to come out and say we have freeloaders for our open source project, it's like, no, the definition of open source means freeloaders don't exist. That's the point.
Right.
There's no such thing as a freeloader in an open source project.
Yep, 100% agree. I mean, so many people are doing work for this. And I think one of the biggest arguments I saw in support of the open source side and open tofu and everything else is, unlike Elastic and well, kind of, and several of the others that have kind of made these big changes, Terraform is run by the providers. Those
Mm-hmm.
providers are created by other people. I mean, Hashi manages a few of them, but overall, these providers are created by other people. I mean, you've got
Yeah.
Anton Babinko out there writing all of these modules and doing all of this. That stuff is what makes Terraform run. The community makes Terraform run. It's, the base code is an abstraction. It's an API. It's not that complicated, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's great. It's done very well, and it caught fire quickly because CloudFormation's a dumpster fire, but or was it's gotten better, but it's definitely got its rough edges. And Terraform hit it just the right time. It, in my opinion, it could have been anybody.
Yeah. And I think if you stand back a little bit and think, all right, what really is Terraform, the CLI? Well, you have a language and you run the CLI against it and you get an artifact out the other end, and it,
Right.
Infrastructure in this case. So that is basically a compiler. And I can't imagine anyone in 2023 going back to paid compilers. Like, who's going to pay
Right.
for a Java C at this point?
Yeah.
And Terraform's the same thing in this case. Really, the value, like the reason one of the reasons compilers are free is because they depend on the community to build these libraries and be able to use it without having to worry about if there's a license issue or anything, and embed it. You get more libraries, more people using it, all that. And I don't know if HashiCorp sees it that way or they understand it that way. I personally think it's a poor long-term view to not see it as Terraform is this community thing that benefits from a community that's free to use it without anyone having to check with their lawyers before they integrate it.
Right. Yeah. My idea was always, so if you have a company that has multiple business units, and of course enterprises get very complicated like this, they are in the same company, but they still pay each other.
Mm-hmm.
Money still exchanges hands between these business units, and it could be, the European unit needs to pay for engineering that the American unit did. Like, this kind of stuff happens all the time, and they actually have budgetary stuff. So if the American unit develops a GitHub action using Terraform that they then sell to the European unit, same company, I mean, is this something that they have to think about? Because it is a direct competitor. That is something that was built, charged, and sold and competed against Terraform Cloud. So I think that's always been something that just got so hairy that I didn't like it at all. I don't know. I mean, sure, if you got enough lawyers on retainer, I guess it's fine. But
it's still friction, though, right? Like, aren't we supposed to?
Yeah.
Good businesses are trying to reduce friction.
Right. Yeah. So that's always been kind of my thing. Or if I went and created a new Terraform provider and sold it because it enabled a bunch of stuff. I did a bunch of work. I needed to have that provider covered. Is that right under the license? Can you sell a
Yeah.
provider? Can you sell modules? Can I sell a course that does labs of Terraform? There's all of this stuff that I know they're never coming after me because God knows I don't make enough money for them to care. But, if I got really successful or something, who knows? They might say, actually, you're using our product and we want people to buy our training instead.
Oh, yeah.
And I will say there are some foundations out there that do get a little weird about that. Working at Linux Academy, we have actually been, well, I say we, it doesn't even exist anymore, but they were chased down by some major foundations out there that had their own training.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, no, sorry, these are our products. It's our training. Linux Academy fought back and won, but
Yeah. I mean, just imagine too, if you're a company that's trying to get acquired and you're using Terraform, so even if it is a non-issue, now it's a negotiation strategy where the other company can say, well, we're not really sure about this. Maybe we need to knock off like a 10 mil or something like that in case we get into hot water.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I actually haven't heard that argument yet, and that makes a lot of sense. I know, the new business license, I think they just released that, or somebody just read it and saw that during their quarterlies, they were talking about how the original open source license was a liability. And then now they've been able to remove that clause. That clause was actually in their quarterlies, and then they just removed it. So I think that
I see.
pretty much confirms how much pressure was coming from the top.
Yeah. And there's also another talking point that both comes from HashiCorp and others that, this doesn't really impact 99% of the users.
Ugh.
And I disagree with that.
Yeah.
So let's take a comparison. The year of the Linux desktop has been happening for 20 years now. And
it's not more.
But the world agreed, well, not the world, the US agreed that Microsoft was a monopoly and we should sue. And it wasn't because we didn't want grandmas and fathers and people less technical not using Windows. It was because we know monopolies aren't good and we want to do what we can to lessen that. Because when someone comes in a monopoly, they don't make better products. And this, I think, is a very similar case where the only people who can sell Terraform things is, first of all, unknown, but definitely not if you're selling something that competes with Terraform Cloud. And that does impact a lot of users because now if they want to run Terraform in the CI/CD, and they either have to build it themselves, which is a distraction, money, time, all that, or they have to get TFC, which may or may not do what they want.
Right.
Like us competitors don't have customers because, we're abducting them before they go write the check to TFC. It's because they come to us and they say, hey, for our use case, this is actually a better fit for us and we like it.
Right. And honestly, your platform stands out even more to me because you're so much different than TFC. In a way, you accomplish the same things, but the interface is all through GitHub. It's just a completely different interface that a lot of people are way happier with because they want that single pane of glass with GitHub and stuff. They don't want to deal with another platform, and that's a very, very okay thing. And just the idea that, oh, sorry, no, actually, you got to go through Terraform Cloud. It's kind of like, no.
Yeah, exactly. And part of we're a small company and we don't want to be $1 billion company. We enjoy the niche we're in and we just want to have, pretty decent lives off that. So we try to make decisions that will, in our hope, be best for the customer. And so we don't want you using our UI just because, studies say you'll pay more if you're stuck in the UI longer because you spend more time there or something like that. Like we're not trying to get the attention of everyone. We want you to accomplish what you want to accomplish.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And somehow you got to get gas in the boat when you get stuck in the doldrums, right?
Exactly. Either that or you go mad.
Yeah. There's some literature history for everybody.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And I've been looking at the Open Tofu Slack for a while. I've been kind of lurking, honestly, way too busy with all sorts of other stuff to really follow it as much as I'd like, but I have been in there, and it's definitely one of the more active Slacks. So a lot of people say this isn't going to catch fire. This isn't a big deal. It's just a couple whiny companies. But I will say that there are a lot of very, very motivated people who are working
Yeah.
on this, and it looks. I've worked personally with some of them when I was at Spacelift. Some of these guys, just awesome, awesome, awesome people, and super hard
Yep.
workers and great programmers. So it's really exciting to see how far this thing's going to go. I know IBM it was IBM, right? Yeah, IBM just came out with their Open Vault.
Yeah, I
It's
think at least what I saw is IBM is in the commits, but hasn't publicly said they're involved.
okay. Well, they definitely mentioned it
Okay.
at a conference. I'm trying to remember which conference it was, but they launched at a conference. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
yeah, it's on YouTube, so it's enough for me to see it. I'm
Yep,
sure they're
IBM's.
backtracking now. They're like, whoops, shouldn't have done that.
Yep,
But
yep. But yeah,
yeah.
Open Tofu, it has people working on it full workdays, every workday. It's got
Hmm.
a team that's growing. There are a lot of pledges when Open Tofu happened. We had a manifesto where people could pledge, and those pledges are real. People are getting hired. Those seats are getting filled. So people are working hard on it. I know it's been, like in the 3 month area since it was announced and all this happened. And um, the stable release is coming. There's actually, it's one of those things where like when you hear, oh, just fork this and you're done, there's actually infrastructure involved in sufficiently running Terraform, in
Right.
particularly the registry.
Yep.
And Hashi updated their registry license that only the Terraform CLI is allowed to hit it. So we had to
Ugh.
stand up all that to, which, we want to do in the long run anyways, because you don't want to be
Yeah.
dependent on HashiCorp for that. But it did motivate having to do that. And that's just a non-trivial amount of work. So stuff is happening. It's coming. I don't think I can say dates or anything, but
Yeah.
it's coming.
I saw.
There
I
is a
know
date. There
Voic.
is a release
Yeah.
date.
Yeah.
So it's on the calendar.
Wojciech launched it on his LinkedIn. That's enough for me.
Yeah.
So I know that there's I believe something stable coming out in January is last I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is great. And overall, if you were to alias OpenTofu to Terraform, everything is expected to be the same, pretty
Yeah.
much on parity.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are things, of course, like if you do dash dash version, you're going to see Open
Well,
Tofu. And so, like,
obviously,
all those
yeah.
things, but all your files are going to be in the same places because those are okay. Since
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like an API compatibility layer at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But everything is compatible with older versions of Terraform, and I believe with 1.6 as well.
Okay. Yeah. So the latest I think we're missing right now, Terraform test, I believe,
Yep.
and Terraform test. I'm trying to remember. I think there were a couple other things, but it seems like those were mostly cloud centric anyway, so it didn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah. That's another thing where I think HashiCorp is sort of happy to confuse Terraform and Terraform Cloud when it suits
Yeah.
the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So Terraform, the CLI, that is totally different, and that is what OpenTofu is compatible with.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. They've been kind of working on that narrative for a little while.
Uh,
I do know that. I was a HashiCorp ambassador for a little while,
okay.
so yeah. And I mean, I still love a lot of the people at HashiCorp. Guys, please don't yell at me for like jumping on this bandwagon, but I'm sorry, this bandwagon is the direction I want to go. So,
Yeah.
uh, new courses will still cover Terraform. I'm not changing to OpenTofu, but if you want to alias to OpenTofu, absolutely get after it. So I'm more than
So I'm
happy
really
to
looking
support that.
forward. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the stable release.
Yeah,
That's when Terra Team is going to officially support it as well. We've sort of been dabbling with the beta, but we don't want to put it in front of our customers until it's
yeah,
really ready.
of course, of course. No, that's awesome. That's great. Well, do you have anything else you'd like to cover? Got anything else resting up there?
No, I think we covered all the good stuff
Nice, nice. So when you go back to the boat,
in February. So I'm here just relaxing, enjoying land time for about 2 months.
okay, that
Yeah.
sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, Malcolm, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I am so glad we got to finally work out time to get that done. And if you've got anything else to say to the crowd, how should they find you?
Yep. Come to terrateam.io. We
Mm-hmm.
are very focused on just Terraform OpenTofu on top of GitHub. We are a GitHub app that you install. All of our configuration is done inside the repository. You don't have to hit a UI at all to get up and going. Everything happens inside of your PR comments. We have a Slack. Join, talk to us, ask questions. We really value giving really, really good support. So we're very responsive there. We love to help people out. So please at least come to the Slack and say hi.
Awesome. That sounds fantastic. And I don't even know if I'm in there. I have to be. There's no way I'm not.
Yeah.
I'll check. All right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. And Malcolm, if you give everybody a little bit of a cheers here, get that
Oh,
AI out of the way. There we go. Cheers, everybody. Thanks for
cheers.
listening.
Thank you very much, Derek.